I'm okay.
Go ahead, Larry.
Let me call to order the March 19th Harwich Board of Selectmen meeting. And we will, well, I'm going to pass on the Pledge of Allegiance for the five of us. And we'll move to, Joe, you want to give us a brief status of how this is operating?
Certainly. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. Again, this is being broadcast live as we speak on Channel 18. The subject of the agenda tonight is such that the board is able to do their deliberation through this medium of GoToMeeting. The general public has been being provided access in accordance with the open meeting law through the Channel 18 broadcast. It will also be shared through our website, as all selectmen meetings are. So I want to remind everybody that this is the first time that we are conducting a Board of Selectmen meeting virtually and remotely. Of course, it's going to require a little patience. I do want everyone to know that we've already conducted 6 virtual department head meeting updates this week, and we're starting to get into a rhythm and flow of this technology. Again, this is being streamed on Channel 18, and that is for the full public access for the public to be aware of what the board has done this evening. I'd say in light of both the newness of this technology and the serious matters that need to be discussed, the participation for this meeting needs to be limited to the Board of Selectmen and myself as your interim town administrator. We will be doing more outreach to the public. I will talk a little bit later on under my administrator's report about a community leadership forum that's scheduled for Friday, March 20th. And so we will, going forward, have more regular meetings of the Board of Selectmen with more robust presenters from the public. So at this point, Mr. Chairman, I'll turn the meeting back over to you to begin the agenda. And what I would recommend is that everyone just be identified and any votes be done by roll call so that people can understand who's speaking and who's voting. So I would recommend that we get into the habit of saying, for example, this is Interim Administrator Joe Powers speaking. I will now yield to Chairman Larry Ballantyne.
Thank you, Joe. And I'm Larry. And I'll continue with you, Joe. Could you give us a weekly briefing on the COVID-19 and the sewer work improvement?
Certainly, Mr. Chairman. First to the coronavirus, COVID-19. Of course, today, ironically, being the first regular meeting of the Board of Selectmen by full remote participation, is sadly the same date as the first presumptive confirmed case, which is the required language of the CDC. And that means that the town is treating this as a positive case of a Harwich resident. That was evidenced, or that was announced, I should say, to the general public in the manner in which all announcements have been going out. And those are the guidance documents. Today's guidance document dated March 19, document number 6, announced that fact. We announced it in that manner so that we could try to reduce or eliminate misinformation and rumors. It was fully vetted by the health director, myself, and legal, and we felt an obligation to present a channel by which the general public could understand that the town was aware of it and try to create a communication channel of getting the most up-to-date and accurate information as possible. Mr. Chairman, as I mentioned, there is a community leadership forum that is scheduled for Friday, March 20th at noontime. I will get into more details on that under the administrator's report. But what I want the board to be aware of is this is one of several ongoing efforts where, because we're all practicing social distancing, we miss out on the opportunity to have broader community conversations, not just in regard to COVID-19, but to everything in our community. So the Community Leadership Forum on Friday, March 20th is intended to be the first of several broad teleconferences that will then be shared to all of the constituent groups that are represented. between that and expanding Board of Selectmen meetings going forward to allow access of presenters who are not on the board to be able to participate and present to the board, I think will go a long way towards establishing a new routine during the COVID-19 crisis, and perhaps hopefully instill some confidence and calm that while we go through this very difficult time, that the municipal government of the town of Harwich is still moving forward as much as we can. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to end my update on COVID-19 there, but I would imagine that you and members of the board may have questions. So if you prefer, I can yield at this point if the board has questions, Mr. Chairman.
I appreciate that. I'll actually pass that question along to you. Does anyone have follow-up questions for Joe? Seems none right now. Joe, can you continue on then? Excuse me, Michael, yes.
All right, if we could just kind of an update on where people are positioned now, town employees, are they still in town hall? The EOC, who's located at the EOC now? But if Joe could give us kind of an overview of who's still working, who's not working, who's going to town hall, who's at the police department, that would be helpful, I think, to the public.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, and certainly, so the update now is, as I believe was announced through guidance document 4 or 5 earlier this week, following on the emergency meeting of the Board of Selectmen on Monday. All municipal buildings are closed to the general public, and the purpose of that is to eliminate foot traffic so that we can have greater effect in social distancing. While these buildings are closed to the general public, the employees in those programs, unless are dealing with child care issues or are dealing with family care issues or health issues, all employees that are able to report have been reporting. As I mentioned in the opening, we've been doing daily check-in meetings in the morning of all department heads to then get the messages out from the department heads to their staff. We've been doing daily checkout meetings in the afternoon to check in on how the day has gone, what issues have been coming up, and prepare for the next day. And I think as I said earlier, we're starting to get into a much stronger rhythm for that kind of communication. In addition to that, I did establish 5 working group teams that are populated by department heads and any staff resources that they've been made aware of. What they're focusing on are key areas of workflow processing. So now that the foot traffic has been eliminated to municipal buildings, we're actively and quickly working on workflow procedures for how the work that would have gotten those departments can get to those departments. You know, as a quick example, if you think of a person looking for renewing a dog license or getting a copy of a vital record or paying a bill or a fine or seeking information, those are the kind of workflow protocols that we're reestablishing. Tied into that, we're establishing what we call a Dropbox mechanism. And again, in this technological age, unfortunately, I'm not talking about Dropbox, the application. I'm talking about actual Dropboxes that'll be located in front of the municipal buildings that are closed. So that would become a mechanism by which the general public can present their work to be done by the town. And again, that's being actively worked to create a protocol on that by our department heads. The next one that we have is a work group on messaging, and that means quite literally signage. What are we doing for continuity of message on building closures, on the buildings and signs throughout town to alert people to the fact that the buildings are closed, but how they can make contact. Beyond that, we will expand that as messaging needs to ramp up using the signboards throughout town, adding sign messaging, if you will, to the website and other communication methods. The next group is succession planning, both within departments and throughout the government. And that is as employees are impacted either by the effects of the virus, or caring for someone who's been impacted by the virus, or again, just has any other issues regarding child care or family care, that we're developing a plan in place so that if we start seeing a reduction in available staff, we can start reacting. The last one on that is the technology capabilities. Obviously, the quickest way to identify that is this very mechanism that we're using this evening, relying upon staff to establish the software application GoToMeeting for the department head meetings, now for selectmen's meetings, and for public body meetings going throughout the crisis. All of those work groups are working to establish those protocols, first and foremost, so that we have continuity of operation as much as we can in municipal government. And that's a present case and a future case. And then balancing that out with our obligations to our workforce who have families and have concerns outside of work. And really, it's been our effort this week, and it will be our effort going forward, to balance the public's need to access municipal government services while being mindful of our obligations and our concern for our fellow workers and their family concerns. That's the answer to what we've been doing and where people have been for the most part. Once we became aware of the presumptive confirmed case, I reached out to Megan Eldridge, our public health director, who, given the nature of the state of emergency as declared by the governor and the president, is the primary point of contact, because the state of emergency is in regard to a public health crisis. So we mobilized as many direct members of the Emergency Operations Center as we could. So that was myself on behalf of administration and the board, Megan Eldridge as public health director, and a rotation of representatives from police and fire, but mostly the deputy fire chief and police chief respectively in those departments. I hope I've gotten to the heart of most of what the question was. I'm going to yield at this point and wait further questions.
Michael, did that answer your response to your question?
Thank you. Yes, it did.
And I will reiterate that this is our first run using remote participation. And so this is a bit of a learning curve, as we mentioned initially. We'll work on this to allow, as Joe said, more to ensure we have public participation as well moving forward. Joe, do you wish then to move to the sewer projects?
Certainly, Mr. Chairman, and I just want to make sure I have, unfortunately, all I see here right now, Mr. Chairman, in my materials is the construction schedule regarding Phase 2 Contract 1, which I know the board is going to have a more detailed conversation about. At present, the 1 week look ahead, the work they've been doing this week, obviously they've been continuing their gravity sewer installation on Chris Joe Beth. Sewer crew number 2 has been doing the work on Route 137. That's between the areas of Route 39 and Austin Road. And the 2 week look ahead is continuing gravity sewer installation for Crew 1. Crew 2 continuing work between Austin Road and Lighthouse Charter School. Again, barring any further conversations or discussions by the board. And the same is essentially what their 3 week look ahead is. I do apologize, Mr. Chairman and members of the board, the materials that I'm reading from do not include the Phase 2 Contract 2 update.
Okay. Regarding the Contract 1 update, how are we doing on the traffic flow there, Joe?
If you mean where do we stand on the traffic flow, I know
Yes.
that I had conversations with the town engineer and our wastewater superintendent. It's difficult for me to weigh in because, quite frankly, the vast majority of my efforts have been related to emergency management and trying to manage the department head updates and respond to all of the other activities. So I'm a little bit flat-footed on that one at this point, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. At some point during this discussion, should we look at last meeting we had, we discussed night work. Should we bring that up again?
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, is that a question to me as administrator or to the board?
It's a question to the board.
Larry,
Yes.
if I may, I was going to bring that up. It would be helpful. I think Mr. Fox, who was on earlier, I think it'd be very helpful to hear what he had to say. But judging by the lack of traffic because of this the tragic circumstances here, it seems that with businesses or restaurants being closed and school being closed out there, this would be a good time to try and get through past those businesses as quickly as we possibly can. I don't know if we need to take an emergency action right now, but I would be in favor of making some decision on Monday at the very latest, because I do believe Robert Hours buttoning up their work quicker than they need to at this point. And I don't want to speak for the businesses, which is why I'm willing to wait till Monday. But I do think Robert B. Hour is geared up to do some extra work out there and get beyond these businesses. And I don't see a better time than now, as long as they don't get their construction project shut down like they are in Boston.
I agree. I don't want to, it'd be good to take advantage of this downtime, basically. But not being able to hear what Paul said, hold this off until Monday then. Any other discussion?
I don't know if, Joe, if we need to change. I'm not sure what the agenda says for the discussion for Monday, but it would be helpful if the agenda item changed for Monday that would allow for a broader discussion on this as well as a vote. And I think RPM Carpets and the Foxes, their input and having them able to at least weigh in on this, whether it's in an email or dial into the meeting, would be helpful.
Agreed. We'll follow up on that.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, just to follow up on that, if the board members individually also want to notify me or staff of anyone that you want to ensure has participation rights, for lack of a better phrase, for Monday's meeting, let us know. I believe our full capacity is 251 participants, and that's why we wouldn't be able to open this up for a broad phone conversation for the general public, but we certainly have significant bandwidth to add participant access well beyond the 5 of you and myself and staff. So if there are people that on any agenda item that you want us to reach out to, we can work with them on getting contact information, and also perhaps give them a walkthrough on how this actually works in general.
Thank you, Joe. That was actually my misunderstanding. I realized not everyone could join at once, but I had thought that we could take people one at a time if they called in. So we'll have to work out that procedure. Moving on then to the consent agenda. Joe, do you want to handle this for us? We have one item, or Steve rather. I'm sorry.
Sure. Selectman Steve Ford, consent agenda. Vote to approve the resignation of Thomas P. Johnson from the Golf Committee, effective immediately.
Second.
Is there a second?
Yeah, Don Howell
Again,
seconded that.
Okay. Don Howe seconded. Again, Tom has been very active in the community. He's been on golf course committee for a long time. He was on our search committee for the town administrator last time we had that exercise. We appreciate all the work efforts he made to the town. We have a vote in a second. All in favor?
Gotta
And
do
I'll take a roll
Larry.
call. I'll start with Don.
Aye.
Ed?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passed. Moving on then, we have no public hearings or presentations because of the process we're in, so we'll move to new business. First one is the Caleb Chase Fund request.
Larry, if it's helpful, I don't mind reading off these motions to make it easier, one at a time, and then roll call vote. If somebody else would agree to do a second, then it will be
Sure.
consistent.
One at a time.
Michael,
I would read them one at a time because we have to do a roll call vote on them.
Sure.
yeah, but it helps out. And Don, you spoke up, so you want a second these as we go forward?
I will, except for two of them.
Okay, that's
Okay.
fair enough.
Which two, Don?
Cape Side and Dock Side.
Which are the numbers?
They come down to H and L. H
Okay.
and I, rather.
Okay, so I'll start with A. Vote to approve Caleb Chase Fund request in the amount of $800.
Second.
And that's Don Howe, second. Any discussion? All in favor?
I think you got to do roll call, Larry.
I'm sorry. I'm losing my, I'll start with you then, Michael.
Aye.
Don?
Aye.
Ed?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
And I'm also an aye, Larry. And so that motion passed unanimously.
Okay.
Item B, Michael?
Vote to approve the appointment of John Larrabee to the Recreation and Youth Commission as a full member, term to expire 6/30/21.
Don Howell, second.
Any discussion? If not, I'll do roll call vote. And Michael?
Aye.
Don? Ed?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
And I'm aye, so it's passed unanimously. Item C.
Vote to approve the appointment of Jacqueline Pence Green to the Harwich Energy Committee as a full member, term to expire 6/30/2021.
Don Howell, second.
Any discussion? I'll take a roll call. Michael?
Aye.
Don?
Aye.
Ed?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
Move on to item D.
And you were an aye on that as well, Larry?
Excuse me, I'm an aye, yes.
Okay. Vote to approve seasonal all alcohol liquor license to the Witchmere Harbor Functions LP DBA Witchmere Harbor Beach and Tennis, 23 Snow Inn Road, Harwich.
Don Howell, would that be with any previous conditions already approved?
Yes.
Second.
Okay, I'll take a roll call vote. Michael?
Aye.
Don?
Aye.
Ed?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
And I vote in favor, so pass unanimously.
Okay, vote
Item
to-
E.
Okay, vote to approve seasonal all alcohol license Hot Stove Inc., DBA Hot Stove at Cranberry Valley, 183 Oak Street.
With any previous?
With any previous conditions included.
Conditions.
Don Howell, second.
Thank you. Again, a roll call vote on the motion. Start with you, Michael.
Aye.
Don?
Aye.
Ed?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
And I vote in favor as well, passed unanimously. Move on to item F.
Vote to approve seasonal all alcohol license, the Belmont Condominium Beach DBA The Beach, 1 Belmont Road.
With all previous,
Second,
Yeah,
with all previous conditions.
Don Howell, second.
Thank you. Again, vote call, just going down the list each time. Michael,
Aye.
Don?
Aye.
Ed,
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
And I vote aye. So it passed again unanimously. Next we have G.
Vote to approve seasonal all alcohol liquor license, Ember Pizza Inc., DBA Ember, 600 Route 28, Harwich, with any previous conditions included.
Don Howell, second.
Thank you. Next vote, Michael.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, this is
Yes,
the
Joe.
interim administrator. So just bear in mind that for this licensee, there were hearings held previous with penalties, for lack of a better phrase, assessed. Is it the board's intention that that be considered all previous conditions?
In my mind, it is, unless someone else has a different opinion.
And then, Mr. Chairman, if I can just add before you open that for general discussion, there is an ongoing pending decision to be made regarding further hearings that were held that were obviously impacted by the recent events. What I would suggest is that the board will receive any recommendation from me as hearing officer. So I understand that if the board is going to do this with all previous conditions and penalties or something like that, just be mindful that the board may have to revisit the license and restrictions in the future.
Joe, what's your schedule of those activities?
Was scheduled to have met with council earlier this week. Of course, the closure of the building and then the other actions have pushed that to the back at this point in time. I hesitate to offer a schedule going forward, but just we don't know what's happening on a day-by-day basis. So I will say as soon as reasonable and practicable. And there's also another hearing process that was delayed further by the current crisis.
Is your recommendation to table this until we gone through those issues?
I would say that it's appropriate for the board to continue the process if the board's comfortable. I just wanted clarification that all previous conditions, whether the board intended that to be previous penalty and punishments that were levied by the previous hearing officer.
Michael, do you want to rephrase your motion to include all those thoughts?
Are we on G still, or are we on to H?
We're on G, Amber.
We're on G. Well, I already did with any previous conditions included. I would think
And then you want to add in,
I would think that punishments would be different from conditions. Am I wrong?
I don't know.
it sounds correct. Joe, you want, because that is, once you get the license, we can still punish them, right?
So, well, if I can respond to the question, I agree with the Selectman McCaskill's question. My point was this licensee had previous, if they had previous conditions attached to their license, I wanted the board to make a determination as to whether the recent, and that is 4 months now, recent affirmation by the board, I believe, of punishments recommended by the previous hearing officer, that the board understand whether that's going to be added or not, separate from what I will be offering as hearing officer. So previous conditions, I think, is separate from previous punishments or previous actions, however we want to say it. But to Selectman McCaskill's question, that's the question I would ask the board to deliberate on at this time.
Mr. Chair, this is Don Howell.
Yes,
The question I have through you to Joe is, if that was adjudicated, have those penalties been assessed already?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, my understanding is the penalties were presented, I believe, to the licensing authority, you all as the board. However, all of the penalties relate to the 2020 season license. So it would not have been a condition that existed for the last license, but it is a effect that is intended to be identified going forward.
If I might then, isn't that really an assessment of a penalty against the license holder and not a condition of the license?
Except that I guess what I would need is clarification what the board means by conditions. The penalties that were assessed relate to the hours of operation for license, entertainment and other things.
If I may, Larry?
yes,
So the way that I see this is we're not changing the conditions of their license. We've penalized them and we've taken some nights away from them, if I remember the punishment correctly. But the conditions that I'm thinking that we're imposing when Don wanted to, with any previous conditions, is that you'll close at 12 o'clock or stop playing at 12 o'clock, stop playing at 10 outside. Don, that's what you mean by condition, correct? Because the penalty is the penalty and they've been assessed that. And by approving previous conditions, I think we cover ourselves fairly broadly.
Don, you want to respond?
Well, yeah, I basically agree with Michael, Mr. Chair. The punishment is of the vendor. It's not a condition of the license, like what time do you close or, universally or whatever. Because you can, through the ABCC, you could suspend the license, but that's not a condition of the license. That's actually an assessment of a punishment against the license holder.
Okay. Thank you, Don. Ed, any comment?
No, I think I see them as two separate issues. I mean, our approval of their license with the pre-established conditions, we go forward with that, but our penalty procedure is separate from that and is meted out as we have decided based on the recommendation of the hearing officer. And as I understand it, it still needs to be paid, as you will, during the coming season.
Okay. Thank you, Ed. Steve?
I would agree with what Ed just said. I think it's separate from what we're approving tonight. We have the authority through our hearing officer, his or her determination, and then our vote to levy a penalty, even with the license in existence. So I think this vote is solely relative to the license and any conditions thereon.
Okay. Thank you, Steve. Joel, thanks for raising that issue. It sounds to me like we've answered your questions in our direction. We have a motion in a second. I'll start this time with you, Steve. Reverse the order.
Aye.
Ed?
Aye.
Don?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
And I'm an aye.
Mr.
We had
Chairman, if I
questions.
may,
Joe, please.
in the interest of time, would the board be willing to table items H and I? I do know I have some issues with item I at this point that it was mixed in and should not have been presented for this evening. And I would defer to the
Okay.
members if they prefer to take a similar action on H. But I would ask that we
Is
hold
there any
off on item I.
is there any objection to tabling these?
Mr. Chair, since I was the one who brought up H is not as big a deal as I would be. I'm just going to reiterate my objection generically to having a license there. So there's nothing more to it than that.
Okay.
Okay.
Uh,
I guess
Does anyone,
if I may.
please, Michael.
Okay. Joe, is there a reason why you mentioned H other than Don's objection to H?
Thank you. There was
Okay, I'm going to go ahead with H
Michael,
because this is a license renewal of a license that's already been issued, and as far as I know, with no penalties or fines or problems. So I'm going to vote to approve seasonal all alcohol license Capeside Kitchen Inc. DBA Capeside Kitchen, 537 Route 28, Harwich Port, with any previous conditions included.
This is Ed McManus seconding.
any other comments, discussions? We have a motion in a
Mr. Chair, just to reiterate, I personally feel that it's inappropriate for the proximity to the church to issue any license to any vendor. It's not personal to this guy.
Okay. Thank you, Don. With that comment, we do have a motion and a second on the floor. I'll take a roll call. Steve?
Aye.
Ed?
Aye.
Don?
Nay.
Michael?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. So 4 in favor and 1 opposed is passed. And, does anyone object? We'll table I then if there's an objection.
Is there a specific basis why it's being tabled?
Mr. Chairman,
Joe,
I can
I'll
speak to
let
that.
you.
As the board may recall, there were outstanding questions with regard to the site plan for the last license on the direction of chair. Several months ago, staff has been working on that as far as the site plan goes. Additionally, the staff has been working on a request by the tenant to impact upon the structure. So there's more work to be done to close out what the board was looking for last year, and also to offer the board information to make an informed decision on requests of the tenant going forward this year. So we just need more time.
Don Howell. Mr.
Yes,
Chair,
Don.
this is Don. I may be splitting hairs, but I just want everybody to understand that legally, when you table something, you have to vote to take it off the table. Really, aren't we just holding this in abeyance until the next agenda?
Yes.
That's correct. We'll put this back on a later agenda.
Mr. Chair, Steve Ford. Joe, is this going to be able to be put back on in the next, like the next meeting, or are you talking about some long delay?
No,
It'll be a longer delay. Joe, sorry.
No, that's okay.
Go ahead,
I was going to say certainly not for Monday, the 23rd, but also, as you'll hear in my interim administrator's report, I was going to introduce the concept of meetings more than just weekly, to increase the number of remote meetings and decrease the amount of time spent on one meeting. So I would not expect it for the 23rd, but if the board goes to a more frequent meeting, perhaps sooner than later.
Answer your question, Steve?
Yeah, I just want to say, in fairness to, the dockside, that, we should address this as soon as we can.
Agreed. Michael, you want to then move on to Jay?
I will. Can I just ask one question about this? Joe, if I'm reading everything everyone's saying right, this is to get the liquor license where it's supposed to be, because it was originally approved for 80 seats and it's only supposed to be 50-ish, and there was no site plan. So is that why this is being held?
Sorry, if I may, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
That's part of the equation. In the very recent off season, the tenant reached out to the town to inquire about additional appurtenances, and so that has to be vetted as well because it could come to play on the conditions of the license. So it's certainly to clear up the site plan and the seating, which was a concern last year, but also beyond that to vet the request of the tenant to add appurtenances.
Thank you very much. Okay, I'll move on to J. Vote to approve seasonal all alcohol license, Go Industries Inc., DBA Perks, 545 Route 28, Harwich, with any previous conditions included.
Don Howell, second.
Any discussion? If not, a roll call again. Steve, I'll start with you this time.
Aye.
Ed,
Aye.
Don,
Aye.
Michael,
Aye.
and I'm an aye. So pass unanimously.
Mr.
Michael,
Chairman,
we've moved
if I may, just,
Joe?
I apologize. Sorry, Mr. Chairman. I didn't want to bring this up during the vote, but I just want to put it out there in the public sphere, if you will. I did not raise the same issue for this licensee, although there is a pending hearing, simply because the board gave clear direction on a previous licensee. I just want to put that out there in case anyone thinks we're not handling this in an equal manner. So thank you.
Thank you for that clarification. Michael, you want to move on to the next one?
Vote to approve seasonal all alcohol license, Port Restaurant and Bar Inc., 541 Route 28, Harwich, with all previous conditions included.
Don Howell, second.
Thank you, and Joe's already commented on this. Any other discussion? If not, take a roll call vote. Michael,
Aye.
Don,
Aye.
Ed,
Aye.
Steve,
Aye.
and I'm an aye on that. So
Mr. Chair,
again, passed. Yes,
can we ask, I guess it's Scott, to scroll up the agenda? Thank you. There's the little icons on my camera that we're laying on top. And actually, you scrolled it up a little bit too high. That's good.
Okay, I'm going to vote to approve seasonal wine and malt license for the AJG Corp. DBA The Weather Deck Restaurant, 168 Route 28, Harwich, with any previous conditions included.
Don Howell, second.
any discussion? Take a roll call vote. I'll start myself this time. I'm an aye. Michael,
Aye.
Don,
Aye.
Ed,
Aye.
Steve,
Aye.
is passed. Move on to the next one.
I'm going to vote to approve
Yes,
seasonal.
we're on M.
We're on M, yep. I'm going to vote to approve seasonal all alcohol license, Pleasant Bay Group Inc., DBA Wauquosit Inn, 173 Route 28, Harwich, with any previous conditions included.
Don Howell, second.
Motion's been made and seconded. We'll take a roll call vote. Steve,
Aye.
Ed,
Aye.
Don,
Aye.
Michael,
Aye.
and I'm an aye. Moving on to our last one.
I'm going to vote to approve Sunday entertainment license, Port Restaurant and Bar Inc., 541 Route 28, Harwich, Sundays 10 a.m. to 12 a.m. live entertainment inside, and 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. live entertainment outside. 2019 license approved for 11:30 a.m. to 10 p.m. live and recorded music, location of music not referred on license. I don't think that should be part of this motion.
Now, Joel, do you want to explain why that was added?
Yeah.
I'll try. I think that was an attempt by staff to identify that the prior year license is not necessarily consistent with what we've been doing recently on entertainment licenses. However, that is conjecture at this point by me.
But Michael, I agree. I don't think that should be part of this motion.
I'm gonna just read this real quick. Just bear with me, and then make another motion because it wasn't seconded. All right, so it's just going to be vote to approve Sunday entertainment license, Port Restaurant and Bar Inc., 541 Route 28, Harwich, Sundays, 10 a.m. to 12 a.m., live entertainment inside, and 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. live entertainment outside, with any previous conditions included.
Is there a second?
Mr. Chair, this is Don Howell. In a certain way, if this is earlier and there's Sunday services at a church right down the street, I think why wouldn't we hold this off in the same manner we're doing with the other license, so we give some opportunity and notice that this is actually going to start an hour and a half earlier than last year? I'm sure the church might be interested.
Mr. Chairman, this is the interim administrator, if I may.
Yes.
I would recommend that this be held off by the board, mindful of that there's that there's language that was written over the license in the packet. And if you look at that, I think it talks about hours that are different from what was applied for. I'm not entirely sure of that, but I think it bears review by staff before the board takes action.
And we also give more chance for participation. So
Yeah,
without objection, we'll hold.
I'm going to withdraw my motion pending information from staff.
Without objection, we'll hold this until we get follow up on this. Okay. Thank you. I see we have nothing in the contract session. Old business. Last is Joel, your town administrator's reports.
And thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. I'd like to simply speak to what I have not yet gone into detail on, and to just advise the board generally the general state of things in our region and certainly in our state. And we're all aware of what's going on nationally and globally. First, I want to alert the board to a teleconference that I made reference to earlier. At this time, there is a scheduled community leadership forum, which is scheduled for Friday, March 20th at noon. We're looking to go from noon to 1. As I mentioned earlier, I've reached out to representatives that support the town of Harwich in any number of community-based sectors such as government, health, certainly business organizations and merchants, community groups that support folks like the Family Pantry and so many others, nonprofit organizations, and representatives of the media. The purpose of this community leadership forum is to give all of those broad sectors representation on a call. And I've indicated that there are 4 simple goals for this call, and that is first, for all of the participants who are representatives of the broader community, be able to ask questions related to coronavirus COVID-19 as it impacts upon the town of Harwich specifically. For those participants to answer questions in that same light, for participants to give information updates, and for participants to receive information updates. And then the takeaway for all the participants is for them to go back to help us distribute the information, as they can do better than we in government by reaching out to their specific core constituencies. And so, Mr. Chairman, as I've made you aware of it, I wanted to advise the board that it would not include any majority of any public bodies, so that we have greater flexibility in how we can handle this conversation. It is going to be taped by Channel 18 and rebroadcast on Channel 18 after the event. And most of all, I'm very hopeful that we will be able to expand the participation of this group as people become aware of it, and create it on at least a weekly basis as a significant step towards reestablishing community conversations that I think I'm realizing this evening that we probably all took for granted a week ago. We no longer have, and I don't mean to wax poetic, I apologize, gentlemen, but I'm a little tired and it's been one of those weeks. Or maybe it hasn't been one of those weeks. It's been an unprecedented week. But what we're losing in all of this, and it's no one's fault, but we're losing our freedom, our right to assemble. And so we need to approach it in a different way. And I'm hopeful that this event, the Community Leadership Forum, will give greater confidence and calm to the community of Harwich that we're doing everything we can in these difficult times to ensure that voices are heard and we continue to have dialogue and conversation. And so again, the effort for that, I've worked with a number of folks to try and pull together as broad a group as we can. I just realized I think I left out education. So certainly we've reached out to the superintendents and other educational leaders, both public and private, in Harwich. And I'm hopeful that this will go a long way towards reestablishing our community dialogue, which is so vital. Again, as we go forward, I'm very hopeful that we will have public bodies reconvening with as much frequency as we can handle, while doing all of it by remote participation during the health crisis. And I think as we get into what is hopefully referred to as a new normal routine, that we can stay in that until we get to go back to what we've always known to be normal. And then beyond that, Mr. Chairman and members of the board, if the board wants, a broader discussion on COVID-19, I can tell you that today is referred to as Teleconference Thursday. And it was necessary, but I participated in or led no fewer than 5 teleconferences. The most important of those being with our department heads, and then the others being regional and broader organizations as we're all trying to get a handle on this. I also want the board to be aware that every single department head and every employee of the town of Harwich is doing their level best to ensure continuity of government operations, despite all of our fears and all of our concerns and all of our family obligations. And so decisions have been made this week that may need to be undone, and things may need to be done differently as we go forward. You'll hear from your counterparts and your peers in other municipalities where there are other towns that have had to shut down operations with the exception of essential personnel. So I just want to remind the board that our effort this week, through the chairman and through the department heads and the employees and countless others, that we've been working towards continuing to offer the structure of municipal government while ensuring that our employees are still able to take care of all of their personal and family needs and obligations. And so it's comforting to some level to be able to participate in this effort tonight, and we'll get better at it. But I also just want everyone to remember that this is a situation that we now find is changing on an hourly basis. And so we've tried to maintain continuity of operations. We've tried to do so to be as flexible as possible. And everybody has been as patient and as collaborative as one could expect in these difficult times. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Joe. Steve, we're on to the selectmen's reports.
Yeah, I want to thank Joe and obviously all the staff and department heads of the town for all the hard work. This is a totally changing by the minute situation we find ourselves in. I will say, Joe, I've heard personally from a number of staff and department heads at how good a job you've done, and I want to thank you for that. And the leadership now is so important, and hopefully, as you said, we can have more frequent selectmen's meetings. I would think that would be a very good idea going forward here, so we can address not only the issues of the day, but also any issues that come up as a result of the COVID-19.
Thank you, Steve. Don?
Yeah, I totally agree with what Steve just said. I just want to go a couple steps further. I mean, without restating the obvious, these are unprecedented times. I don't know that anybody ever anticipated they would ever see these days. And the public particularly needs to understand it's not just the continuation of government. There is nothing, I repeat, nothing more important to the board and the employees of Harwich than the safety of the citizens of Harwich. And to that end, I want to particularly thank Megan Eldridge, our health director, the folks at the police and the fire departments, including Chief Gilmet and Chief Clark, and particularly Joe, who appears to be sleeping standing up over the past week. People are really stressed out. People want answers that we can't give them, but I can tell you that we have their backs. Every waking hour, we're worried about the town.
Thank you, Don. Michael?
Sorry, I'm just gonna, I'll echo both of the comments, and thank you, Joe, and thank the entire staff, department heads, and their direct reports. But thank you all, and I look forward to more meetings and keeping the public as informed as we can.
Ed?
Yeah, I guess I'll echo what Steve and Don had to say. There's one issue, though, that I'd like to raise to be put in the hopper for maybe some contact over the next week or so. I've been a lifelong blood donor and been involved in both the Red Cross and the Cape Cod Hospital blood donor programs, and I know both those programs have taken a significant hit with all of their collection sites having closed and blood donor drives curtailed. And at some point, I think if we could reach out to both of those organizations and just investigate whether we could attempt to restart some of those programs, because it would hate for the current crisis we're on to beget an additional crisis of lack of blood supplies that at times of, car accidents or emergency surgery are the sort of issue of life and death for people.
Thank you, Ed. For me, I think you've all stated your appreciation for the town and the efforts probably better than I can. I certainly agree with that. I do want to add my thanks to Scott Tisley for helping us with this remote call-in. This is our first try. We'll improve and get better as we learn the technology. I will comment that I participated in a Conservation Commission remote call-in last night. And as tonight, it didn't go probably as smoothly or as comfortably as we would like, but the applicants were extremely appreciative that we as a town and our departments, Board of Health, actually the day before that, have taken this extra effort to keep them going, get this in place. And so thank you all. No final comments. I'd ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Yeah, that one I didn't take a roll call vote. No one's going to object.
Okay.
Thanks.